Hey everybody, this is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 back here with a new video, and welcome to the first edition of Spider-Man Month. So, happy 60th, Spidey. So yeah, this year marked Spider-Man's 60th anniversary. And yes, I did a whole bunch of different top 10 lists that I wanted to do to celebrate the Wallcrawler's 60th anniversary. And don't worry, wrestling fans, the SummerSlam video is coming soon. The SummerSlam 2000 review, I'm going to do it soon. But this is the first video I'm going to do of this month, of the month of August, since Spider-Man debuted in the month of August in 1962. And that is a list of my top 10 favorite episodes of Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 1990s. The Spider-Man 90s cartoon, to me, was often or not a series I'd love to revisit. And how can I not? It's just that good of a series. And I probably plan to rewatch all the Spider-Man cartoons that were ever made. So anyway, let's talk about the animated series, the 90s animated series, and its best episodes. So this is my top 10 favorite episodes of Spider-Man the Animated Series. And yes, there are a lot of multi-parter episodes on this list, but some standalone episodes too. Number 10, The Cat and Black Cat. So this is the only episode from Season 4 on this list, and this is a really good episode. This two-parter focuses more on Felicia Hardy and her father, John Hardesky. We learn in this version that Alicia's father actually learned the formula that gave Captain America his powers. And the Kingpin wants to recreate the super soldier serum to not only to have his own basically to have his own army of super soldiers. And he has the chameleon, and he also enlists the help of Dr. Octopus in this episode. This is a really good two-parter, and also, yes, in the second part, Felicia Hardy becomes the Black Cat. And this also marked the Black Cat's debut into the series. And I gotta say, first impressions are always a thing to me, and Black Cat had a really good debut in this series. So overall, it's a really good episode. So both these episodes together are great. I mean, having to involve the likes of the Chameleon, Shield, and of course, even Dr. Octopus, it's just a great episode. Number 9 is the Alien Costume, parts 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I got a few Season 1 episodes on this list. And to start this off, we got the Alien Costume. Throughout parts 1 and 2, we have Peter Parker having to struggle with the Black Symbiote taking over his body after the Black Symbiote bonds with Peter after he rescues John Jameson from his shuttle crash. And of course, the Kingpin wants to get his hands on this element called the Promethium X, which the symbiote was inside of. And of course, we get the debut of the Rhino and Shocker in this multi-parter. So yeah, Shocker, Rhino, and yes, even Venom make their debuts in this episode. So you get 3 villains for the price of one great 3-parter. So yeah, there's that. But the highlight of this is the debut of Venom. And Venom in this series had such a really good debut. And yes, he would go on to make a few other appearances in the series. Number 8, Framed, and The Man Without Fear. So Peter Parker is framed for the crime of selling American secrets, basically being branded a traitor to his country, and Peter must find a way to clear his name, along with the help of Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. So yeah, the highlight of this two-parter is mainly Daredevil himself. And yes, this is another episode I like the Chameleon in. Even though I'm not really much of a fan of the Chameleon, I gotta admit I really liked him in the 90s Spider-Man series. Although I still can't really take Chameleon seriously as a villain. I know he was one of the early Spider-Man villains, but I still don't like Chameleon all that much. But I really like his incarnation in the 90s show. Especially how he uses an apparatus to transform himself. I mean, that's the most clever thing they could have done with the Chameleon. But overall, it's a really good episode. Framed and The Man Without Fear was a really good two-parter. But the highlight of this had to be the Kingpin's backstory in part 2. And yes, I still find it very unsettling that the Kingpin even had his own father killed off-screen. I'm assuming Kingpin basically killed his own father for revenge, after his own father left him to rot in prison. Number 7, The Sting of the Scorpion. So yeah, I'm gonna say it right now, I like the Scorpion. And next to Carnage and the big 3 of Spidey's big bads, the Scorpion would be another villain I truly love. And yes, he's in my top 5 for a reason, of my top 5 favorite Spider-Man villains. Not only because I just think his design is really cool. And this adapts the Scorpion's first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 20. But unlike that, Stillwell does not die after trying to pursue the Scorpion by trying to climb up a building and then falls to his death. And of course, the final battle does not take place inside the Daily Bugle offices. No, it rather takes place inside an Oscorp power plant, where the Scorpion thinks radiation could turn him back into plain old Mac Gargan. And that's kind of one of the Scorpion's main motivations, that he wants to be himself again. But, we never got this resolved for him. But overall, it's a really good episode regardless, and a good way to introduce the Scorpion. In my personal point of view, I love the Scorpion. I always thought Scorpion had such a cool design. Next up, at number 6 is the Goblin War from Season 3. So my first Season 3 episode on this... this is probably my second Season 3 episode on this list. So, Felicia Hardy is getting married to a guy named Jason Phillips. And, of course, during the party, Norman's alter ego of the Green Goblin begins to rear its ugly head. Oh yes, did I forget to mention Norman Osborn had become the Green Goblin previously in this season? Yes, this season 3, they finally brought in the Green Goblin. And soon, the Goblin tells Norman that he can get rid of all of his enemies, Kingpin, Hobgoblin, and even Spider-Man. And of course, he lets the Goblin out. Oh yes, and also, speaking of Hobgoblin, he gets his hands on a device called the Time Dilation Accelerator, which creates space-time portals. And Hobgoblin has a spy within the Kingpin's organization that made power packs for the Time Dilation Accelerator. So, it's also a really good episode, especially the ending when the Green Goblin shows up at the Kingpin's hideout. And he and the Hobgoblin begin to duke it out, and then Spider-Man gets involved. It's a really good episode. Number 5, The Hobgoblin, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Okay, yes. From a Season 3 episode to a Season 1 episode. And it's no other. It's not just any season 1 episode. It's the two-part first appearance of the Hobgoblin. And yes, I forgot to mention, the Hobgoblin is voiced by Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill. Yes, while Mark Hamill was doing the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, he also played the role of the Hobgoblin in Spider-Man. And I gotta say, anything with Mark Hamill in, I'd definitely be invested in. And I especially loved how he portrayed the Hobgoblin very well. It's a really good episode, especially since the fact that not only did they give Hobgoblin a great debut where he tries to assassinate Wilson Fisk, but of course, we even see him try to get revenge also on Norman Osborn, as well as kidnapping Norman's son Harry to hold him ransom as part of his revenge on Norman. Of course, it's up to Spider-Man to actually put an end to this. And of course, Peter Parker also moves in with Harry Osborn. And then, by the end of the episode, he realizes that he wasn't ready to move out. So, yeah, there's that. Number 4 is the Mutant Agenda and Mutant's Revenge from Season 2. So, if I had to think back on my favorite episode from Season 2, it'd probably be the X-Men crossover. So yes, the basic premise, Spider-Man meets the X-Men. Peter goes to meet with Charles Xavier, thinking that he has a cure for his mutation. Spider-Man, on the other hand, learns that Charles Xavier does not have a cure, but from Beast, he hears that Herbert Landon, the entrepreneur, basically is working on something to turn mutants back into humans, or to get rid of the mutant gene. But we realize that Landon's whole plan is to obliterate mutants himself. But the MVP of this crossover is definitely the Hobgoblin. Yes, I've had 3 episodes in a row that the Hobgoblin appeared in. And yes, he had been blackmailing Landon and using Landon as a mole within the Kingpin's organization. But Landon, of course, wanted to quote-unquote betray the Hobgoblin. So it's a really good episode overall. And mostly why I put this on the list is the dynamic between Spider-Man and Wolverine. They really play off each other really well in this two-parter. Number 3, enter the Green Goblin. Well, from the Hobgoblin to the original Green variety himself, the Green Goblin's debut was a really good one. I kind of like the Green Goblin's debut episode. In this one, when Norman Osborn is presumed dead, the Green Goblin begins showing up and kidnapping Oscorp board members, including the likes of Wilson Fisk, J. Jonah Jameson, and of course Anastasia Hardy, Felicia Hardy's mother. And yes, even Mary Jane Watson herself gets abducted as well when she gets captured by the Green Goblin while snooping around Oscorp. That's a really good episode, and of course, the highlight is definitely the big finale, is the big showdown between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin in this episode. And it was revealed that Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin all along when Spider-Man unmasked Norman. Number 2, Dr. Octopus, Armed and Dangerous. So, yeah, Dr. Octopus in this episode has kidnapped Felicia Hardy, as he plans on using her for ransom against the Hardy Foundation, because he also wanted revenge on the Hardy Foundation for refusing to fund his experiments. This episode is a really good introduction to Dr. Octopus. And I love Dr. Octopus for it. Out of the big three, he's probably my favorite of the big three. He'd probably be my second favorite Spider-Man villain, and then after Doc Ock would be Carnage. Anyway, Doc Ock is just out to continue his fusion experiment, to continue his life's work. And of course, he would become a regular nemesis for Spider-Man all throughout the series. It's a really good episode, not only to introduce us to Doc Ock, but Ephraim Zalbelis Jr., who also voiced Alfred in Batman the Animated Series, played a really good Dr. Octopus. And that my number one is Venom Returns and Carnage. So in this episode, Cletus Cassidy, a serial killer, a crazed serial killer, holds off the police at the beginning of his apartment. We actually show how much of a monster Cassidy is. And I'm kind of surprised for a kid's show, they actually managed to depict an actual fucking serial killer. That is just incredible that they actually did this, that they actually managed to get that past the censors, that they managed to depict an actual freaking serial killer who's also incredibly crazy. Oh, yes. And this episode also adapts the first appearance of Carnage, this two-parter. And, of course, we get this. But what I really love about this episode is the fact that they also included the likes of Baron Mordo, Dormammu, and yes, even the Armored Avenger himself, Iron Man. Yes, Iron Man is in this episode, as well as War Machine as well. So this two-parter was a really unique two-parter, especially Spider-Man having to team up with the likes of Iron Man and Venom to take on Carnage, Dormammu, and Baron Mordo. It's a really good episode, and yes, the Venom symbiote is returned to him thanks in part to Mordo. Like I said, it's a really good episode, and I loved every second of this episode. And yes, there was also the psychiatrist that Venom himself was in love with. Yes, Venom was in love, or Eddie Brock was actually in love with his psychiatrist of the prison that he went to. Anyway, it's a really good episode, and I love this series. Overall, the 1990s Spider-Man cartoon definitely is one to remember. And I will definitely never forget it, whether it be the unique intro and the notes that play in the music, or how kid-friendly this show can be, given the fact that Fox wanted this to be super, super kid-friendly, but because, yeah. Anyway, this has been your Digital Super Saiyan 3, and I will see you guys next time. See ya!